Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. We're back in action this week, home from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where we took in the events at Mining Disrupt 2025, an awesome conference. We'll talk about that to kick off today's video. But in addition to that, you guys, some big news in the Bitcoin mining sector today from Marathon, IREN, and specifically Hut 8 Corp, which we're going to be dissecting in today's presentation. In addition to that, we're nearing in on the close of Miner Madness 2.0, the official end of Q1, and Bitcoin is hovering around $10,000 lower than it was at the end of Q4. This is obviously going to have big impacts to any of the miners that have a hodl and a topic of today's discussion. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below what you thought of today's press releases, how you're feeling about the Bitcoin mining sector overall, and your outlook for the price of Bitcoin in the second quarter of 2025. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, Anthony. So here we are back in our hometowns, Monday afternoon, an eventful weekend for both Bitcoin and the miners. We're going to come on to that in a second. But before we do, what a phenomenal week we had down in Florida. This was my first time to the state, and it definitely did not disappoint. We were down there for Mining Disrupt 2025 in partnership with Dennis Porter, who's a friend of the channel. Satoshi Action Fund has been on quite a few times, actually, talking about their initiatives. We got an opportunity to take the stage a few times each, Anthony, and ran into a number of fans and industry experts while we were at the event.
Absolutely. Really good week. Good conference. As you say, on the stage twice over the 2 days. And met a great many people. A lot of the miners were there as well. We weren't thinking everyone was going to be there, but actually in the end, we had quite a few miners to catch up with and hear what's been happening in their neck of the woods. And thoroughly good week. Enjoyed it.
Most definitely. Now, in addition to the miners, Simply Bitcoin was down there. Nico, he's been on the channel before. Great catching up with him. Asher Janut was actually on one of my panels. Some very exciting news from Hut 8 later in today's video. And of course, our friends at Bitdeer, Fortress, DMG Blockchain, and managed to make it to a Miner Mafia meetup, Anthony. So great to see so much activity in the space, despite maybe some of the challenges we've seen in the market itself. Now, another person we ran into was Lawrence Leopard. He just put out a book named The Big Print. Excellent reading. I took advantage of that on the plane ride over there. He's scheduled to come on the podcast as well this month. But I would definitely say the highlight, Anthony, was our Wall Street versus Main Street panel, where you squared off with three of the industry experts directly from New York.
That for me was probably the highlight of the week in terms of at the conference itself. You know, I mean, we've been in the space a few years now, and some people criticised when I first came to the space, you know, and saying I was pretending to be an analyst, and then, you know, a couple of years later, I'm actually on a stage with these guys, and actually, you know, pretty much holding my own. It was a great panel. You moderated it, and we had Matt Siegel from Van Eck, we had Kevin Deedy from HC Wainwright, and Ruben Sahakiran from Stifel. Three great investment banks, and there's me sat in the middle of them, you know, discussing effectively what analysts look for in public mining companies. So an IPO 101 for Bitcoin miners, essentially. The panel was great. Different aspects from every speaker. So it was good to hear that clarity of what they're looking into, what I look into. And I think the audience felt they probably walked away with it with some really good knowledge to help them with their due diligence going forward. Really impressed with the panel. And you did a great job too, Bryce.
Yeah, thanks so much, Anthony. And this was a highlight of my probably career in the Bitcoin mining space. As you say, we look up to the Wall Street analysts. We've ran into them a number of times on our tour to Denton and Corsicana last year, again at Bitcoin Investor Week in New York just a few weeks ago. And great to be rubbing shoulders with this caliber of analyst. Anthony, I would definitely say you held your own up there, and looking forward to continuing in our next conference, actually, Las Vegas Bitcoin, where you'll be speaking as well on the stage there, Anthony. So, with that being said, a phenomenal week. We got back to reality here. Again, a lot of discussion on Twitter or X over the weekend about where we're at in this Bitcoin cycle. So you can see the chartists or the technical analysts talking about whether they think we're in a bull or bear cycle here. Vivek posts another great picture of whale accumulation, indicating that smart money or big money is continuing to push into the Bitcoin market. And Cantonese Cat, who's a well-respected analyst in the space here, talking about if this could be setting up for a bear trap, Anthony, which is essentially people betting on continued downward pressure and then an unexpected increase. It feels at this point the market is almost disconnected from the fundamentals of these stocks. The Bitcoin miners continue to be punished, really irrelevant of whatever news, earnings, press releases they put out right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen today a little bit of pullback on a few of the miners with some of the news stories that we've just highlighted there, but most of the miners in the red today and have been in the red since the start of this year. It's been absolutely, a real pullback for a lot of people who's in the space. I mean, I think now I was going to say average miner is down probably 45-50% just since the 1st of January. And that's been more noticeable if you think about the positions and the competition. Even the person in the lead in the competition is still down about 30%. And bear in mind, the last competition, which finished at the end of December, literally every person who entered the competition, bar about maybe less than 10, were in profit. So that just tells you in a space of different quarterly cycles how things can really affect. Now, 2025, if we follow the previous cycles of 2017, 2021, is expected to be a bull cycle. We are still holding that ground around the 83,500 in terms of Bitcoin price, but we're still quite a distance away, at least 30% lower than where it reached in January, which was about just over $109,000. So, time will tell, but we'll come on to a couple of stories that might start to sort of like maybe get some of that momentum back in there.
Yeah, and it's a good point you bring up. What a difference in Miner Madness 1.0 versus 2.0. Very interesting to see risk management in the second iteration here compared to the pure green leaderboard in the first version. We've got Miner Madness 3.0 coming up for Q2 here. We'll talk about that in a second, but as you say, Anthony, as we're going through these news stories, keep them in mind for your selections this time around. Now, we've talked a lot personally on the channel about where we think we are in this cycle. We've seen so many positive news stories this year about Bitcoin adoption, policy, and obviously the Trump family's personal investment in the space. It got me thinking, Anthony, Saylor obviously rubbing shoulders with very high well-respected people within this administration, continuing to put out his buy chart over the weekend here, indicating another orange dot. Essentially, the question I asked myself is either Saylor is going to end up getting rugged by his apparent new friend, Donald Trump and family, or he's onto something here and knows that the bull market is coming. So in my opinion, it continues to be a great opportunity to accumulate. And lo and behold, Anthony, Saylor coming out this morning with an additional purchase of 22,048 Bitcoin for just shy of $2 billion, further confirming this thesis that he may be onto something.
Yeah, another great buy from Strategy, heading towards that 600,000 Bitcoin mark there, well over 500,000 now, probably going to get very close to getting that 3% of all Bitcoin that's ever going to be produced. I mean, that's going to be a sizable amount for effectively one organization. We've talked about this before about, will it matter? And I raised this with a couple of the analysts there, and they weren't overly concerned about it, too much there. And the fact that the likes of BlackRock have got a similar amount of Bitcoin, well over 500,000. Strategy got over 500,000. And then you have the likes of, the second largest public company to hold Bitcoin is Marathon Digital, and they've got just over 46,000. So effectively, maybe somewhere in the region of 8 to 9% of what Strategy hold. So that's quite dominant from them. But looking at the smile on his face as he sits in the chair announcing that purchase there, he knows something that we don't. And bear in mind, he was one of the few people that got invited to the White House to discuss Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. And he was on that table when Trump made that 20-minute speech highlighting what the US was going to do. So he probably knows a lot more than we do on how things are going to move forward. So I say we're still in a bullish position here.
I certainly agree. And a quick shout out to Jason Less. I saw he was moderating a panel with Senator Lummis and Michael Saylor. During the time we were in Florida, there was another conference in DC as well that week. So as you say, Anthony, a big smile on his face. He's definitely been in the right circles here, the right rooms. Some other people that have taken a real leadership role in this space are Donald Trump's sons themselves. So Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, again on X last night, rumors coming out that they may be investing or starting into the Bitcoin mining space itself. And lo and behold, Monday morning, a massive announcement from Hut 8 Corp partnering with Eric Trump to launch a Bitcoin mining company.
Yeah, big news today. Hut 8 Corp, they've launched Bitcoin Corporation. It's a majority-owned subsidiary focused on, really industrial scale Bitcoin mining and strategic reserve development. They're going to target some in the region of about 50 exahash, which will put them even as a subsidiary, in that top tier of miners, and looking to get the efficiency rate, lower than 15 joules a terahash. That's going to be, at the moment, more efficient than IREN, because IREN are at 15 joules a terahash, and by the time they get to 50, they'll be significantly lower than 15 joules a terahash when they install, the latest mining machines from Bitmain at their facilities. But this is a massive news story. And what Hut are going to bring to the table is they're going to, contribute ASIC miners to the new entity, American Data Center, which was co-founded by, as you already mentioned, Eric and Donald Trump Jr. And it's been now renamed, and it's now been renamed American Bitcoin. Hut 8 will remain the exclusive infrastructure and operations partner, ensuring that, the stable revenue streams, while American Bitcoin's leadership will include Mike Ho as chairman, Matt Prusak as CEO, and Eric Trump as chief strategy officer. So a great management team in place there. They're also going to be, directors of that company as well. You've got the likes of Asher, who's the CEO of Hut 8. He'll be a director. Mike Ho will be a director. Justin Mateen and Michael Brukham will also be the four directors there. But this is a really interesting update. And obviously the high profile of the president's family members there getting involved in Bitcoin mining, further emphasizing, the president's stance on Bitcoin. So it's only been a positive news story all the way back from where we saw him on the stage back in Nashville last year. It's just been a roller coaster ride from there. And hopefully this might sort of, steer some positivity into the space and get the Bitcoin price rising.
Yeah, this was a great announcement. And if you think about it, Anthony, very logical. Obviously, Hut 8 is based in Miami. We know the Trump family has a lot of ties with Florida, often spending time in the States. We also know the Trump administration has been meeting with a lot of the top tier Bitcoin mining CEOs, essentially auditioning, I guess, for some sort of a partnership like this. And if we recall, one of Trump's main commitments back in Nashville was to secure Bitcoin mining in the United States. Now, this is obviously very important to blockchain security. We talked about this a lot at the conference. You brought up the fact that BlackRock and MicroStrategy have a huge portion of the Bitcoin, Anthony, talking about concentration of Bitcoin. One of the key concerns we heard really from the team at Ocean at the conference was concentration of the mining pools themselves and ensuring that the United States has the majority of the hash rate or hash power globally to ensure they have that blockchain security. So this was a great announcement from Hut 8 and a real feather in their cap, as you say, an extremely high profile cast involved in this announcement or new subsidiary. Now, the next piece of news, you made reference to the HODL value of some of these miners earlier in today's presentation. Marathon comes out stating they're now raising an additional $2 billion to buy Bitcoin. This has big implications as we're now down around $10,000 compared to where we closed in terms of Bitcoin price Q4, Anthony. How is this going to impact the HODL value of these companies? And what do you think of Marathon doubling down on their Bitcoin purchase strategy?
I've never been a massive fan of the miners buying Bitcoin. We saw it happen in 2022 with a few of the miners buying, then ended up selling it. We have seen, a number of miners in recent quarters buy Bitcoin. So we know that Riot bought some, Marathon already spent a couple of billion buying Bitcoin. And it's great when obviously when the Bitcoin price is rallying, but bear in mind some of these miners bought Bitcoin at over $100,000 and we're sat at 83,000. End of the quarter is today. Today, Bryce, is the 31st of March. So, in the next month or so, you're going to start seeing Q1 2025 numbers coming out for whichever quarter it may be for the actual company. But the first quarter of 2025, those results will start appearing, I'm going to say in 3 or 4 weeks' time. And they'll be, I said to you before, if the Bitcoin price doesn't get to 93,000, those miners with a HODL will start feeling the impact of the reverse effects of the FASB rules, because as good as you can show the gains, you can also show the losses as well. And this quarter, it starts at 93,000. It looks like it could finish at 83,000. That could be $10,000 per Bitcoin held in custody. And if you look at the likes of Marathon, who've got 46,000 of them, that could be 400,000. Sorry, that could be a 400 million loss to their income statement before you start talking about revenues from the mining business during that quarter.
Yeah, definitely puts some pressure on these management teams, especially as we see those unrealized gains or losses on the HODL really take impact on these miners. So a big announcement from Marathon, obviously a big announcement from Hut 8. I've got to ask myself, Anthony, I chuckled about this morning, calling this new subsidiary American Bitcoin. We've obviously seen CleanSpark's tagline, America's Bitcoin miner. So interesting, the naming conventions here as well. Moving along now, the other piece of news that came out last week was the CoreWeave IPO. Now, CoreWeave is obviously a massive company. They were privately held. There was questions about their access to capital as a private company. This obviously could potentially impact their deal or ability to pay for their deal with Core Scientific. They've now IPO'd. This obviously takes a lot of stress or pressure off the potential CoreWeave deal. And as we talked with Russell Can in Fort Lauderdale last week, they have plans to become really one of the biggest data center operators in the United States, clearly outlined in their most recent investor presentation.
Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now.
Yeah, we've covered extensively Core Scientific's deal with CoreWeave. Yes, the IPO happened on Friday, $40 a share. It's currently down 10% today. And, the market will just be trying to work out a valuation for the company. But once, obviously, revenues coming through from what they're going to deliver using the facilities of Core Scientific. So CoreWeave effectively will be bringing their own GPUs into those 5 or 6 sites that Core Scientific are currently refurbishing in readiness for this. They'll be negotiating their own energy contracts with the energy providers. And once you start seeing the revenue coming through for those there, then I would imagine that the share price to start to rally when these significant revenues, because if they're paying the likes of Core Scientific, just one of their customers, in the region of $10 billion over the next 12 years, you would like to think the revenues coming through over that period will be at least more than twice that amount to give them at least a nice margin of that money, maybe even 3 times. And you think they've got to obviously buy these GPUs, they've got to pay for the energy, which will be substantial, pay for Core Scientific, and make a profit for the shareholders now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And if we recall, the number one catalyst for 2025 outlined in the Core Scientific investor presentation was to diversify their customer base. So it'll be interesting to keep tabs not only on this CoreWeave deal, but any additional potential announcements as we start to see this AI development and infrastructure build out in the United States. Now, the next piece of news here, IREN. They're coming out with a big statement, essentially pausing their Bitcoin mining expansion. This is interesting. We saw a similar story from Riot recently here. Almost feels like a bit of a shell game with the current administration, Anthony. So much fixation and focus on the AI side of things. We've had multiple announcements like this. And then on the other side of things, we have Hut 8 announcing this exciting new 50 exahash expansion. So interesting dynamics here. However, IREN looks like they are focusing more on the HPC AI moving forward.
Yeah, this update wasn't a shock today. I mean, they announced 52 exahash would be their total for the year back on the earnings call, if you remember with Daniel. And actually, it came down. I think initially it was about 56, so they brought that down to 52. The target for the end of June is 50 exahash. They're currently, as at today, they're at 35 exahash. So they've grown 4 exahash since the beginning of the year. They were at 31 on the 31st of December. They achieved higher than their target hash rate for last year. Now they've got effectively, it's a simple calculation now, they've effectively got to grow 5 exahash per month for the remaining 3 months to achieve their target by the middle of the year. And the market will be looking closely at how they deliver that, because in the past we've seen miners who haven't delivered. An example that would be Bitfarms and how their share price was affected with the expectation, of getting significant hash rate. IREN's share price really grew when they started putting these big numbers out there, and we think they'll deliver that. I mean, it's on one site there. This is a real learning curve. They can build these facilities very, very quickly. 25 megawatts per month, I think they were talking about in terms of facilities there. So probably another 3 buildings being built before the end of June, and gets that 50. Then a further 2 exahash will come in the second part of the year. This sort of hash rate, they're talking about now they can generate probably over $500 million in annualized cash flow for the company. So that's a significant position. I mean, I go back 3 years ago, and they had half an exahash. Dan gave me a call and said, "Look, can I start putting numbers as part of your analysis?" And I said, "Yeah, just send me the details through monthly." And look where they are now, 35 exahash. That's 70 times the size that they were 3 years ago. It's a massive growth story there. So great annualized revenue, but then what you got to remember is IREN have got a significant amount of power available both at the Childress site and at Sweetwater. So at the Childress site, Horizon 1, which they mentioned last earnings call there, that's 50 megawatts of IT load. They're going to need about $300 to $350 million of capex, which is expected to be funded primarily through, co-location customer and some debt financing as well. So that 50 megawatts of IT load there, that will complete the effects of the Childress site once they've also installed all the rest of the miners there. That takes that 750 megawatts for the whole site today. Sweetwater data center, however, is 2 gigawatts of power capacity. And they've already provided the investment for the substations and the early infrastructure to get that prepared for that to be energized, I think in the next couple of years. So now the focus is on how they're going to pay for this. So they're now coming up with some sort of financial strategy to optimize the capital structure and align it with, the best way to it with market conditions. And if you remember from the panel we had with Matt Siegel, he was very much looking at miners who were sort of, adverse to debt. He doesn't like to see debt on the balance sheet. So it'd be interesting to see how IREN do this. Now, they have utilized the ATM facility. They've raised $111 million to date. And that's been at an average price of $11 a share. Now, bear in mind the share price today is $6.10, I think, the last time we looked. So that's nearly half that amount. So they were able to get some good revenues at the share price there. Obviously, we're hoping that they're going to maximize the amount of revenue from the share prices if it grows over these next months to sort of like to continue raising that capital. But they also believe moving into HPC gives them additional ways of access to capital. And, look at some of the big institutions. There's a very, very strong appetite there for credit and lending, not so much in Bitcoin mining, but if you remember, again, from Kevin and from Matt on the panel, they were both saying that the cost of capital for miners moving in HPC is massively lower than it is for Bitcoin mining. If you go out now and there and try and borrow against Bitcoin mining, you're certainly looking at double digits. Whereas if you're going out and borrowing with regards to a HPC business, you're looking at very low single digits. And we've already seen that in terms of some of these convertible notes that the miners have used for or getting capital ready for HPC. I think actually with Core Scientific, they had one at, I don't know, 3 or 4%, and then the second one at 0%. So very, very low interest rates for high performance computing. So overall, things are looking fairly good for IREN in terms of the strategy they're using to grow both HPC and get to that 52 exahash of Bitcoin mining. No mean feat.
Yeah, big update for sure from IREN. And another point we heard on that panel, Anthony, was the flexibility of management. So you mentioned the importance of hitting these targets once the management team set those out. You made reference to Bitfarms. We've actually got Ben Gagnon on the program a week today, next Monday, covering Q4 fiscal year results. And then this week on Wednesday, John Belizaire from Soluna Holdings, same thing, Q4 fiscal year results. Going to be interesting to see how those management teams are responding to the dynamics in the market right now. Speaking of market dynamics, Soluna under pressure today, Anthony. Most of the miners in the red. This is exactly what we mean by the disconnect here. We've literally got Hut 8 Corp announcing a partnership with the current president's son, and they are managing to be in the red today, really independent of any good news in the sector.
Yeah, I think there's some news out from Soluna recently about a HPC partner. Now it's not going to happen, so maybe that has some impact on the share price. But that's certainly one of the questions we'll be putting to John when he comes on the podcast this Wednesday, and trying to get an understanding from him, as to why Soluna's share price has been sort of like hit probably more than most of the public miners that we look at the moment, and try to give some understanding to shareholders as to what the future for 2025 and going into 2026 is all about. And will that low share price, low market capital provide less of an access to capital than they previously thought when the share price was significantly higher?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, difficult for these smaller companies to navigate, especially when they get under pressure by the short sellers and obviously the Bitcoin price not where we would have expected at this point in the cycle. Now, where we're seeing this firsthand, Anthony, is the results in our Miner Madness 2.0 competition. As you said earlier, our first iteration here, I think everyone was in the green. We felt great calling it one of the most successful trading competitions around. This time, almost the polar opposite. We're both in the top 50 right now. I think you're 48th, I'm 37th. However, we haven't even managed to get across the 0% into the green here. So interesting now. Looking forward to the next competition starting up. We're going to be posting the information tomorrow, actually, of how to sign up for that. Going to be interesting how people select their picks, seeing these depressed prices.
Yeah, and I explained previously what the reasoning behind my picks. It wasn't the case if I picked my three favorite miners. I looked at the fact that this was a 3 month period and which miners I felt would do particularly well over that 3 months. Well, in all honesty, every miner's done bad, but it's working out which ones have done less bad than the others. And when you consider the person finishing in first place, he's going to be around about 25%, 28% down on the initial investment back on the 1st of January. The challenge is there, and when you look at towards the people at the bottom of the competition, probably losing over 50% there, which ties in with the fact that some of these mining companies have lost 50% of their share price in this last 3 months, and you've not a hard pill to swallow when you see them sorts of numbers. But we've seen some great updates today. President's happy with it. His sons are going into Bitcoin mining. And you think going into Bitcoin mining where you can produce Bitcoin cheaper than you can buy Bitcoin, that may be the incentive why Eric and Donald Jr. have moved into that space there. Time will tell, but it certainly looks like a very positive move for Hut 8. Going to that 50 exahash, joining the likes of IREN, joining the likes of CleanSpark, Marathon Digital, and Riot Platforms, who've already sort of like getting well on the way to achieving that level of hash rate. So it's going to be an interesting 2025 from that perspective.
It certainly will, and very refreshing to get a positive catalyst on the Bitcoin mining front. As I say, we've been reporting a lot of focus or transition towards the HPC AI, but I don't count the Bitcoin miners out for 1 second here, Anthony. We'd be curious to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Are you still investing in this space? Have you moved on from the Bitcoin mining sector as a whole, and where do you see the price of Bitcoin going in Q2 here? As I just mentioned, we're going to be posting details tomorrow in terms of Miner Madness 3.0 signups. We've got some phenomenal pricing left over, and hoping this time around to get a big turnout from the Miner Mafia group. We were actually able to attend one of the meetups in Florida as well and had a blast seeing the subscribers and fans in real life there. So with that being said, you guys, a lot of action today, a lot of news, excitement in the space. We'll be back here tomorrow. Feel free to like the video and subscribe before you go.